Welcome, and thank you for joining us for episode 002 of Fatal to Prejudice. In what was famously called in 001, the lab here. We'll see what my guest today thinks of it. But I got my cousin Gary here. He's got quite an interesting life. I want to welcome him in and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the name The Lab. For all the listeners here, this is just a office painted with black walls, and there's like sound tiles in here, but it's really awesome. It feels like a lab. It really does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're cool with the lab.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm cool with it.
All right. We'll see what everyone else thinks when they show up. We're just gonna
Awesome.
keep asking what people think we should call it. So 2 votes for the lab so far.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm super happy to be here. Definitely have a big story to share.
All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. So we're actually cousins. I'm slightly older, but that doesn't mean I'm a whole lot wiser.
That's all subjective.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, fun fact about our family really quick is the side that I am related to Gary on is Jewish. So I didn't grow up that way, but he did, and I'm very excited to hear about what he has to say.
Yeah, so I grew up, modern Orthodox, Jewish. My mom is Jewish, my dad is Jewish. Both their parents are Jewish. That's the way the story goes is, your mom has to be Jewish and, so on and so forth. That's the family line. And so, yeah, I'm Jewish. I grew up Jewish. I attended preschool at a Jewish institution. I went to the Jewish Community Center of Columbus for preschool, and then went over to Columbus Torah Academy, which is the only, at the time, it was pre-K through 12, but now it's kindergarten through 12. But it's the only modern Orthodox kindergarten through 12 parochial school here in Columbus, Ohio. And so I was fortunate to be able to go there. I had a really awesome upbringing. The Jewish calendar is full of tons of holidays, lots of fun stuff. Speaking of holidays, right now we're kind of in the middle of, the high holiday season. So it's a lot of fun. It brings back a lot of childhood memories. From going to synagogue and all that, and going through elementary school and high school as a Jew in a Jewish private school, I had a lot of advantages. I did not really face adversity much, and I'll get more into that later. I had to face a lot of adversity in college, but again, I'll touch on that later. So went to Columbus Torah Academy for school I did start there in pre-K, kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade. I started struggling with grades. I tried to be, everyone always thought that I was like the bright kid. I'm the oldest in my family. But again, in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I started struggling with grades, and, no one could figure out what was going on. And, so I had an appointment with a psychiatrist trying to figure out what was going on. And lo and behold, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And fun fact, when I was in 8th grade was also when I decided that I wanted to become a dentist. So I'll kind of touch on that story.
Okay, hold on. You've got a lot going on here.
Sorry about that.
No, great. You've got a lot of cool things happening. So real quick, like from where I grew up, like kids were diagnosed with ADHD like pretty young, like 5, 6 years old, whatever. And you're getting diagnosed way after that, where you're like, what, like 10, 12 years old or something?
Yeah, I didn't get diagnosed until I was 13.
Wow.
I was 13 at the time. But yeah, it's funny that you say that because a lot of kids that I knew growing up, They would get well, not a lot of kids, but a handful of kids I knew growing up got diagnosed when they were in second or third grade, and
Yeah.
they're like 7, 8, 9 years old, so it's at a much younger age. And, it's funny that there are a lot of people that say that like they have a problem with hyper kids, and then they send them to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist just diagnoses them with ADHD.
Yeah, and
or
they're
ADD.
they're like, just give them some meds and let's get them out of here.
Right.
Like they'll be
So-
fine.
And that was kind of like the theme, when we grew up in the 90s. Like that was just what was happening, is there were kids that were hyper, they were going to the doctor was putting them on meds. But yeah, so, like I said, I wasn't a hyper kid, I grew up as a bigger kid. I've always had a thicker frame body. So yeah, so I wasn't a hyper kid. I just started struggling with school in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and that's when parents decided to kind of take me to a psychiatrist and figure out, what's causing the problems.
Okay. Yeah. So then you get diagnosed in like middle school age, 6th, 7th, 8th, whenever that was.
It was like probably the beginning of 8th grade was when I actually got diagnosed.
Okay. So then you're already like hitting puberty, and you're going to go into high school, like facing this battle. I guess we'll call it a battle, right? It's not that it didn't really phase you. It didn't seem.
Right. And I, truth be told, as an adult, more or less a preteen, I guess, I didn't really know what that meant. I was learning what every 8th grader was learning, which was algebra and
algebra,
physical science.
World War II,
Exactly.
Civil War, like stuff like that.
Exactly. So, we're I guess, we're not developed, our brains enough to be able to really comprehend what that meant. We're just kind of told I was diagnosed, and I was told, take this medication and you'll be better.
Yeah. And you're like, cool, I'll just accept that fact. You don't know any better.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I, so then really throughout all of high school, I would take my ADHD medicine in the morning. I was prescribed Concerta. Every medication is different for every individual. Obviously the doctor has to make that decision, but that's what the doctor determined was best for me. And I became really successful in high school. When I started my ADHD treatment, I started to get that, like, a sense of ambition. And I started to, not that I didn't really have that before, but it never really occurred.
You kind of figured out what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. You started figuring out your life, that you weren't just, a kid that's going to go to school. You got dreams now. And
yeah, that's one way to look at it.
You mentioned it earlier. You wanted to be a dentist.
Yeah. So I did. So it's funny, when, I don't know why it happened in 8th grade, but I was just thinking about what I want to do with my life. And, my uncle, one of my uncles on the other side of my family from you, he's a physician. He's a doctor. And, I remember him working late hours, having to chart stuff, and do stuff on his computer late at night. And I didn't want that life. I didn't, he's had told me horror stories of residency, having to put in 24-hour shifts at the hospital. That's not something I want to do.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
And so I was starting to think what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to go into some type of healthcare field, but I didn't want to become a physician. And so I had to figure out, well, what else is out there, and in my 13-year-old mind, all you really think is like, it's funny, like the stereotypical, Jewish mother is happy when she has a kid who's a doctor, a lawyer, and an accountant, or some mix of the three.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I really, kind of growing up, it was like, well, either you're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, or some type of professional. And, so that's what, in my mind I had to do. And so I decided that I wanted to become a dentist. I always, again, going back to the Jewish thing, I was in synagogue every Saturday for the Sabbath, and, one row behind me always sat my dentist. And so we would have conversations, and I always had a great relationship with my dentist. I loved going to the dentist. I had one cavity as a kid on a primary tooth, a baby tooth. and obviously I lost that tooth. So I have no fillings in my mouth, no crowns, I had no severe dental disease, no severe dental issues. The only dental surgery I've ever had was my wisdom teeth taken out, and I only had 2 of those, so I'm only half as smart as I should be.
Wow, you are a straight savage because you're the only person I've ever heard that say that they don't hate going to the dentist. Like everyone else I know is like, I hate this. I don't want to go to the dentist appointment. Like I hate it so much. And here you are like, I love the dentist. It's so fun. I'm going on an adventure.
Exactly. And so going into that, when I grew up loving going to the dentist, and people were always like, I hate going to, like, I was leaving school early to go to a dentist appointment. I was like, yeah, I'm going to a dentist appointment. And these other kids were like, why are you happy you're going to the dentist? Like, I'd be scared.
Right.
Like they were like, like their mom would come to pick them up from the dentist, and they'd be hiding in the coat closet, or they'd ask a older kid to push them into a locker or something because they didn't want to go.
Man, I look back and just like think about when my parents would schedule my doctor's appointments, and they always scheduled it like after school.
Oh,
I'm
man.
like, this blows. Everyone else I know is leaving for their appointments throughout, the months, whatever. And I'm like, shit, my appointment's at like 5:00. This is the worst.
Well, that's the funny thing is that like when you're in elementary school, really, and even in middle school too, school doesn't matter. And once you get to college, obviously high school doesn't matter. But
So true.
I guess what might have helped me like going to the dentist was that I'd get a bonus. I'd get to leave school early or something. I don't know. Other than the fact that my dentist never hurt me. And that's, there's some kids that, genuinely hated going to the dentist because either they weren't numb enough or, it's just, it happens.
Right.
And so it's unfortunate, that it happens, but it does.
Oh yeah, I was scarred for life from my dentist growing up. Like they were like, "Oh, we're just gonna take this like, I don't know what the stabby thing is, but like
Which one? There are a bunch of them.
all of them. He took all the stabby things and he's like, I'm just gonna poke all in the gums. Like, oh my god, it was so painful, and I was scarred for life. I still hate going to the dentist today, just because I am scared that they are going to hurt me.
Well, that's unfortunate. Hopefully I can change that for you.
Oh, thanks.
Once I become a dentist.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so you decide to be a dentist like not right after, but like soon after you get diagnosed with ADHD, and you're like, I'm going to overcome any challenge that comes my way, and I'm going to achieve this goal as like a 13-year-old.
Well, and it wasn't really, it's funny. When I was that age, I didn't think about it like that. It's funny now thinking about it like that. But
Yeah.
when I was in those shoes, as an 8th grader, I didn't really think about it from an adversity standpoint. I guess I didn't really understand the stereotypes or much of it, And so I didn't look at it as adversity, and I don't think it didn't really affect me until I was in college, and I really had to overcome certain types of adversity.
Okay.
But we'll touch on that more.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit, because you got some cool facts about you before you get to college.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, in 8th grade, I decided I want to become a dentist. Then I moved on to high school, and so in my high school, at the time, we were like kind of split. Our classes were kind of split into 2 groups. And as mean teenagers are in high school, it was always a joke that like one group was the smarter group and one group was the dumber group, because coincidentally, the quote unquote smarter group had a lot of the better achieving students in the class.
Yeah.
If you will. And so, but I had a lot of really awesome opportunities in high school. I had really great educators teaching me. One who came to mind who really had an impact on my life, who, when I had her as a student, she was Mrs. Thompson, and then she got married, and she became Mrs. Moreno. And she unfortunately passed away from a terrible winter car accident.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but she really touched so many lives. She was a teacher she taught English at our school, and she was a teacher who genuinely loved teaching. She wanted to see that light bulb go on in the students. Like, that was like what she strived to be a fun educator, and she really accomplished it. I remember, watching educational videos in class, or, talking through some Shakespeare plays. Like, we would read plays out loud. We get in a circle, and each person would pick a different part in the play, and we'd read through it, so we'd, really got a lot of depth in literature, in my high school career. And then when I started thinking about college and, wanting to pursue my dreams of becoming a dentist, I understood that I needed to go into the science classes. I need to really hit the STEM fields hard. And so in my senior year, I decided to take AP chemistry. And that was with Dr. Matthew Kennedy. And he did a phenomenal job. I mean, no one can teach entropy and enthalpy like Dr. Kennedy can.
Dude, I don't even know what the hell words you just said to me right now. Like, yeah.
Google them. You'll learn something new.
Oh, I will learn something new. Awesome. I'll forget it 5 minutes after I read it.
That's okay. You probably won't have to use it in your career.
Probably not.
But yeah, so that was my senior year of high school. And then, as a Jewish student, a lot of my friends were going on to do a gap year after high school. And, what they were doing is most of them were going for a year and living in Israel. If you're not familiar where that is, it's in the Middle East. It's a hot spot of a lot of conflict right now.
Yeah.
It has
been for a long time.
For all of eternity, really.
So hold on. Let me get this straight. People that are growing up, as everyone does, and they're like, you know what? Right after high school, I'm just going to go move across the world, like 7-hour difference, and just live there for a year. No one, no nothing. Just know the language and the religion, and like that's about it.
Sorta. So
okay.
Yeah. So growing up and for me, going to a Jewish school, I had the opportunity to learn Hebrew as my second language, because every school you have to learn a second language. Most schools it's Spanish, or French or German or whatever. A lot of times they get to choose, but we had no choice. We had to learn Hebrew. That was our second language. And so I grew up learning the language. And then when I decided that I wanted to take this gap year and live in Israel, there are programs called either yeshivas or seminaries, or there are some programs that are run through universities or colleges, where they're basically, you're based in a central location. You have a dorm, you spend 10 hours a day studying Jewish texts and whatnot, take trips every now and again. And, I'll kind of tell my view on that, because that's what I did. And so, I got to spend, it was 10 months in Israel.
So are these like dorm mates are they from just America, or are they from all over the world?
So it's the program that I went to a program called Derech, which was inside of an institution called Or Sameach. And Or Sameach is a larger institution, kind of like, you could equate it to, like a university of sorts,
okay,
for Jewish studies, where there were students from all over the world who were coming here to learn Jewish texts, the Bible, and different commentaries on the Bible and stuff like that. And, all the, different traditions and stuff. And so, but yeah, the program that I was a part of is an American program, and all the most of the kids were from America. There were a couple from the UK. We did have a couple kids from London, one kid from Austria, um, and yeah,
Wow,
Some Canadians as well.
that's pretty cool. So you made a lot of friends?
Yeah, I made tons of friends. I have friends.
You got
It's
friends
funny.
all over.
Again, I have a friend who's a doctor in Vienna, Austria. I have
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, and through we met. He was actually one of my roommates.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then he decided to become a doctor. And it's funny because in Austria, there's no like undergraduate program. Like you go to high school and then you go to professional school. Like you decide what you want to become, and you don't have to go through the hoops of the American education system like we have to.
Oh, wow. I bet it's a ton cheaper too.
Probably. I don't know how much his tuition was, but it was probably a lot cheaper than mine is.
Wonder what it's like not having to take gen ed classes that you're never going to use again.
Must be nice.
Must be nice.
I don't think I'll ever get to know that.
So yeah, you graduate high school. You moved to Israel
Yep.
soon after, and you're there for 10 months.
Yep.
And this was 2012, 2013?
Yep. So I graduated high school in the summer of 2012, just before summer. And then at the end of the summer, I went to Israel and started my 10 months, and I got back in the following June.
Wow. Okay. So real quick, my side of this, Gary and I have been best friends, even as cousins, and I was so sad to see him leave, but it is so cool that he is back. I mean, this is 10 years later, but like he came back and he had all these sweet stories to talk about. So I really want to dive into like the things that you experienced over there in Israel. And real quick, this is not the like famed thing that Jewish people do is the birthright. This is not
Correct.
that? Okay.
It is not Birthright. So Birthright it's an organization. They run trips for more college age students to go to Israel. It's usually about 1 or 2 week long trip. They take you, you hop on a bus. They take you to the Western Wall, all the hot spots in Israel. They take you to really all the like Jewish touristy places. And, then that's kind of it. It's just a quick trip, really in and out. They spend, I think, a weekend in Jerusalem, and that's it. I lived in Jerusalem. Like, I was based out of Jerusalem. I was a 30-minute walk from the Western Wall and a 30-minute walk from, like, the kind of downtown party center, all the bars and restaurants and stuff.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'll talk more about that here.
Yeah, so like dive into it. You got there fresh out of the airplane. You're like, sweet, I'm in Israel. Like, what's the experience like? Like, is it hot? It's dry? Like, you're in the Middle East. Like, what's going on?
So it was a complete shit. I mean, we're talking like it was a 13-hour plane ride to get there.
Whew, I barely survived 3-hour plane rides.
Yeah. And but the entire plane ride, so we took off. It was like an evening flight, and then halfway through, because we're traveling east, halfway through it got sunlight, kind of like at like whatever 2 or 3 a.m. our time, like the American time or whatever when we left, because we were traveling kind of against the sun, and so I got to see like all the mountain ranges and really cool things. Like I didn't even know where we were in the air, but I saw tons of cool stuff on the way. And then when we landed, it's only people who go to Israel or people who have heard about people going to Israel know this. But when the plane lands in Israel, it's like a very emotional experience. Like everyone claps, some people cry. Like it's a very emotional experience because you're being reunited with your ancestral homeland.
Okay, that's actually kind of a cool fact because like here in America, people clap when the plane lands, and I'm like, why are you doing that? But this is like the Holy Land that you're getting to.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so we landed there, and we got our bags and stuff, go through customs. It's like my first time traveling internationally, so I'd never
Is-
had to go through customs or anything before, and so I'm kind of going through all this by myself.
Yeah.
Luckily I did take the group flight, so the program had a group flight that we could have taken, and we took that from JFK. So I had to flew over to New York, and then hop on the plane in JFK from New York to go to Israel. I mean,
So you got 13 hours of your normal sleep time to get to know these people that you're with and trust them to help you navigate Israel when you get there.
exactly. It was my first time in a brand new country. Never left America.
Never left America, brand new country, traveling alone. Like,
Yeah.
that's a big step, especially right after high school, I
Yeah.
think.
It was a big culture shock, and it was, but I think it really helped shape who I am as a person today. I think, it really helped me be able to adapt and overcome. I got really homesick right off the bat. I was in a strange place. I'd never been there before. A new country, a new currency, new everything. The street signs look different. Everything.
Yeah.
Not many people speak English in Israel. The native language is Hebrew. Granted, there are a lot of Americans there, so there are some who speak English, luckily. But I did have that experience learning Hebrew growing up, so I was really able to use that.
That's awesome. So you go there and you're studying. What'd you study?
Yeah, so we studied, Bible texts. A lot of the Talmud is one of the texts that we did a lot of learning.
What's the Talmud?
So the Talmud is it's kind of like so in Judaism, so there is the written law or the written Bible, and then there's like the oral Torah or the oral Bible, and that was transmitted down from Moses, at Mount Sinai to, and he, I guess, taught it to, the traditions, and his I guess disciples.
Yeah.
And so he taught them, the word of God, basically, like the laws that it's kind of like a commentary on, it's like certain, I guess, ways to observe the laws that are not in the written Bible. Like the Old Testament is the written Bible, and then there's also like the Talmud and the Mishnah, and those are part of the oral tradition.
Okay.
Is what it's called.
So you're studying that. You're studying what else?
We were studying Jewish law. We were studying the Bible and learning a lot of the stories in the Bible, and we had studied some of that throughout my elementary school, middle school, high school, because I went to a private Jewish school.
Right.
I did learn a lot of that. So some of it was review, but it's we were able to kind of learn a lot more about what it means to be Jewish and what it really means to be a Jew and how to live life as a Jew.
Okay.
Because it's hard. Life, especially in America, is hard as a Jew.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. I know that there's been a lot of hate forever against Jews, and it sucks that it still happens today.
Yeah.
And it's not just Jews. There's a lot of different types of people out there that get a ton of hate, and that's one thing that I want to try to like talk to people about and like get their perspective on how they have lived with these, I don't know, discrimination against them or something, like whatever, but yeah, that's cool that you're experiencing Israel and just engulfing yourself and learning deeply about Judaism. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really awesome, and I had a really great time. So we weren't just studying all the time,
So you got to go out and have some fun.
Of course. So one of the things that we did that a lot of people know, well, in Israel, the drinking age is 18. So, and I had just turned 18 that summer before going there. So I kind of learned how to handle my alcohol before a lot of college students were, because I was of age over there. I would, I would go to the liquor store with my friends on a Thursday or a Friday, and we would go pick up liquor, didn't have to have a fake ID or anything because we were of age. We just
Yeah.
bring our passport, and that's all you needed.
So there's a little bit of partying going on, but
Yeah.
there's Shabbos on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, so the Sabbath starts Friday at sundown, and it goes for about 25 hours until sundown Saturday night. And so, for that, we didn't have any electronics, no phone, no wallet, no money, really no, we prayed, we ate, we sang, we danced. Shabbat is a day of rest.
Yeah. So with that in mind, was your typical like class schedule was not Monday to Friday with 7 to 3 or whatever. Like it was a little different.
So it was actually, we started Sunday. So in Israel, Sunday starts the week,
Okay.
and but we usually had Friday off.
Okay.
So we had Sunday we went to class, so it was Sunday through Thursday,
Yeah.
and then Friday we had off, and obviously Saturday for the Sabbath we had off, and so kind of that was our weekend, was Friday Saturday, and that's the way it is in Israel. Is they don't have Saturday Sunday, they have Friday Saturday.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's cool to learn that, not everyone is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
So what kind of like cool things did you go do besides, you were able to drink at 18, but like
That's not the only thing I did.
Right. I'm trying to get to the
Yeah.
the cool things, the experiences that you had of like you're in a new country, and Israel is probably not a place that a lot of people get to go to.
Yeah.
So what kind of sites did you see? What kind of exploration did you do?
So we had took a different trip like every month, and we were traveling. We got to hike all throughout the north of the country. So, Israel is a, biblical land, and it's home to a lot of landmarks for the three major religions in the world, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And, so it is, there's so much to see. There's so much to do there. It's crazy to think that a land that was, really established in 1948, 70 some years ago, is thriving. There are skyscrapers, there's an infrastructure. They have, technology, like cell phones were, actually invented in Israel.
Cell phones were invented in Israel?
Motorola started in Israel.
You mean Apple didn't invent the first cell phone?
No, unfortunately. Apple did not invent the first cell phone.
Jokes. I know. But yeah, it's cool to learn like those little tidbits. Like I've done some research myself on Israel just out of curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And it's very cool seeing what like Israel does and all the research and the fun things that they impact the whole world with.
Yeah, I mean, it's known as the startup nation.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think how many, startups there are there, and how much is going on, how much innovation is happening in Israel. And but yeah, when I was there, I got to see everything, and like, I want to explain it so you guys can all get a picture. Like, we would go on hikes where there would be a river leading to a waterfall, and this waterfall would be like a 50 or 60 foot high waterfall, in the middle of a desert.
In the middle of a desert.
In the middle of a desert.
There's sand everywhere.
It's the Middle East. It's a
Yeah.
And
And
there
a
is
giant
thriving
waterfall.
wildlife, waterfalls. I mean, yes, the country has, a water shortage,
Yeah.
but there are really cool like sights to see like that.
Yeah, so giant waterfall in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Where
That was
what
in the
else?
north of the country.
In the north, okay.
Yeah. And we went, we hiked in the desert, in the Judean desert, which is near the Dead Sea. And so it's the lowest point on earth, in the Dead Sea. And we went hiking in the Judean desert, which is kind of the desert beside it. And so we actually, fun story, we got lost. We had our tour guide, And in Israel, the way the national trail system works is there are like markings on rocks kind of as you go, every so many feet, there's a marking on a rock with a direction or whatever. Somehow we lost track of them and we got off the path and we got lost in the middle of the desert. I mean, we got up on the top of a dune, and all you could see for miles and miles was desert. We didn't know where the path to get back was. We didn't know where the road is. We didn't know where we could see kind of on one side where the Dead Sea was, because there's like when you're in the middle of the Judean desert, so there's like mountains on one side and then there's the Dead Sea on the other side. So we kind of knew kind of somewhat direction, but again, we were kind of 2 or 3 hours out in the middle and we had lost this path. So then, probably about, I want to say it took us about another 2 or 3 hours before we finally like kind of found like a drop off. It was like a sand dune with a bunch of salt. It was like a bunch of salt stalactites or stalagmite, whatever points up.
Right.
The bad ones that, and somehow, someone put down something like I don't know why, but I think they had a sweatshirt or something, and they were, slid down it and like found that was where the road was. And then we finally walked back to where the bus was and found our way.
Wow. How long were you guys lost?
We were kind of wandering in the desert for a total of about 6.5 hours.
6.5 hours you're lost in the desert?
Luckily, we had enough water.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God. I would have been freaking out.
I kind of was at first, but then I was like, well, also another funny thing was we had cell phone service. So if we needed a rescue, we could have called in a rescue. That's like another crazy thing about Israel is no matter where you go, you're going to have cell phone service in that country.
Wow. That's
we're in
crazy.
The middle of the desert with full bars of cell phone service.
That's crazy. Like I've been in the desert out west, and it's like you take 2 steps in and there's no service.
Yeah, like there's a sign that says no cell phone service beyond this point. In Israel, those signs don't exist.
Yeah, they don't know what those signs are.
Right. So we did hikes like that.
Oh, real quick, I want to ask, did you go in the Dead Sea?
Oh, of course.
Is that the one that's like it's so salty you float?
Yes, sir. It's approximately I believe 30% salt or something. All the oceans in the rest of the world I believe are around 0.3% or 3%. I can't remember which one it is.
Okay.
But the Dead Sea is around 33% salt content. And so yeah, it is true you can float on water.
Yeah, that
you
is
just lay
wild.
flat but also like the salt water it's like almost like an oily consistency. Ooh. It's like a thick kind of like an oily consistency, but like people would get some of the salt and it like put it into their empty water bottles and like bring the salt back with them, or like some of the with the salt water, because it has good properties for skin. You can
okay
yeah. Salt is good for a lot of things.
That's wild. Yeah, so you swam in the Dead Sea. You got lost in the desert. You saw the mountains there.
We did that. And then we went on one hike in the north that has a really cool story behind it. So in the mid 1900s, after Israel was established, there was this Israeli spy by the name of Eli Cohen, and he worked for the Mossad, which is the Israeli CIA, the Israeli intelligence agency. And he worked his way up in the Syrian government, and he kind of like became really close with the president or the dictator of Syria, or whoever it was.
The leader.
Whoever the leader was, I guess. And he like would throw these lavish parties for all these diplomats and get them drunk and then get them to spill secrets. They thought he was family, they thought he was one of them. But he worked his way up in this, in the Syrian government, and he convinced them that, so Syria had a bunch of, in the Golan Heights, which was, it had kind of changed hands a couple times.
Okay.
And so it was at the time under Syrian control, and Syria had a bunch of bunkers throughout the Golan Heights, like underground bunkers.
Mm-hmm.
But they had like little lookouts in them. And so Eli, he convinced them to plant trees by the bunkers to shade the soldiers because they were getting hot. You're in the desert.
What a genius.
And lo and behold, Israel bombed every single tree because that's where the bunkers were.
I mean, genius in like war tactics, I guess. I don't know about just like killing people.
Well,
but
yeah, no. But that was how Israel won the 6-day war and was able to capture the Golan Heights in 2 days.
Isn't there a Netflix doc on this?
Oh yeah, it's called The Spy. I forgot about that.
It's called The Spy.
It's
Yeah,
called The Spy.
okay.
It's on Netflix. Really awesome show, by the way.
Yeah.
Highly recommend to anyone to go watch.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so it was this hike that we had went on. We saw these broken down, bombed bunkers. It was a bunch of destroyed bunkers, hiking throughout the north in the Golan Heights.
Oh, so they like Israel like left them, preserved them, and made sure that you can still go and see them and
Yep. They're
learn
part of the
history.
trail. Part of
That's
that trail.
pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what is that like the main thing on the hike, or is there other things to like go and see?
Throughout the north of the country, there's tons of plants and foliage, and again, more waterfalls, more, river banks, and, just really, lots of nature. You don't experience that kind of nature in the Midwest, in the U.S.
No.
Like I didn't know that like beautiful mountain ranges and stuff like this really existed anywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all a new experience for you because you've only lived in Ohio and, being young up until you left, and you visited like New York City a few times.
Yeah, I'd been
You
to New
visited,
York.
like Florida a few times, but that's really the main travel that you did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like my grandparents in New York, I had grandparents in Florida, and really that was it.
Yeah. So this is all like a major culture shock for you.
Yeah. It was insane. I was homesick for like the first 2 months.
Mm.
I'll be honest, like it was hard adjusting.
Oh yeah, I remember getting a phone call from you, and you were like, "I hate it here. Like, I'm so sad. I miss my parents. I miss my brother, my sister. Like, I miss you. I want to come home." Like,
I really wanted to come home
yeah,
for some reason. But I'll tell you what, around the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, where people light the candles for the menorah, and, it's a really, a time to come together. It's in the winter, and, that was kind of when things changed. I started loving being there. I started really taking in and appreciating what I was experiencing. We had, when I was there, I had to run for my life to a bomb shelter multiple times. There were rockets being fired over from Gaza. There were actually I believe there were some rockets that had made their way over from Lebanon at the time. But It was the
Wow.
first time that the air raid sirens had gone off in Jerusalem since, I believe, like in late 90s.
yeah. Like this was actually a major conflict that you survived.
Yeah,
That
thank God.
Yeah, I remember watching the news and seeing this, like, primetime news, and seeing this like on the local news here, not just like the national news, and I was like, oh my God, like I may lose one of my best friends. I was freaking out. But like, what was that like hearing, were you like dead asleep and you hear the sirens and you have to like run for your life? Like what's going on?
So none of the times that the sirens went off were at night for me. So there were, if I remember correctly, there were 3 times that the air raid sirens went off when I was there, and in Jerusalem. So the cities like Sderot and Ashdod and the cities closer to the Gaza Strip were getting rockets rained on them like hail. like literal snow. Like it was literally
Jeez.
raining rockets on
Oh
them.
man.
And there were a couple rockets that made their way, over into Jerusalem, which was probably about 60 miles linearly from the Gaza Strip, something like that. And so, but yeah, one of the times it was Friday night, we were getting ready for the Sabbath, and all of a sudden, like I literally had just gotten out of the shower, and the siren went off. I'm like, oh, guess I got to run to the bomb shelter.
Wow.
And ran
like,
downstairs.
so do they prep you for that? Like when you get to the school, or they like, hey, like, bomb sirens are a thing over here. Like, here's the training that you need, or you just kind of like,
I mean, I remember that they had mentioned to us where the bomb shelter was. But I don't think, like, no one was planning on a conflict like this happening. This was, again, it was the first time in maybe 20 years that the air raid sirens had gone off in Jerusalem.
yeah,
And so they weren't really prepared for it. But anyways, it happened. And one of the times I was playing, it's funny because where I was living, where our institution was, it was kind of like adjacent or across the street from the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, which actually kind of became pretty popular in the news not too long ago in the most recent conflict. But so yeah, I was right across the street from there. So we had, like, for example, it rarely ever snows in Jerusalem or in Israel. And when I was there during the winter, there was one day where it just started coming down and it was just snowing so much. And our Arab friends across the street, and we were kind of like, let's have a big snowball fight. And we all got together and had a snowball fight. Unfortunately, someone had to throw a rock and ruin it. But, there was a moment in time where we felt like, I felt like there was hope for peace. And there still is. I still believe that there's hope for lasting peace in that region. I just think it's going to take some time.
yeah,
But I mean, it was just such a cool experience. Like, our, people we didn't interact with really ever. But then from that point on, like, over across in Sheikh Jarrah, there's a really nice like soccer court and basketball court. And on some evenings, me and a couple friends would go over there with a basketball, and we'd play, and we'd make some friends with some Arab kids that were kind of our age or in high school, and we'd kind of play some basketball with each other, and we made some friends over there, which was really kind of cool. You don't really hear about that in the news.
no, you don't. And like that's kind of what a really interesting thing that I want to appreciate really quick is that you're like 18, 19 years old, and you kind of understand what's going on, but like not at the crazy political level, I'm assuming. And you're just like, I don't care what god this other kid worships. Like, I just want to have a snowball fight with him. I want to play basketball with him. Like, I just want to make friends.
Well, it's the same God.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, they're
I
different
don't know.
ideologies.
I don't
different
know a whole
ideologies.
lot about religions, so yeah. Yeah.
It's different ideologies, and obviously, there's such a conflict.
Yeah.
It's through all of time. Jews and Arabs just don't really get together or get along.
Right.
And to have a moment where we got along, and we kind of created a somewhat of a peaceful relationship with them, kind of really gives me hope that someday we'll see long-lasting peace in that region. And, I mean, that was one of the scariest things in my life, having to run for my life to a bomb shelter. We had 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. The
You had
second that
90
siren
seconds.
goes off, 90 seconds.
Wow.
You start counting in your head.
Oh my God. You're like, all right, like there's the alarm, boom, 1 second, and then you're just counting, and you're trying
just
to
run, like,
run to
1,
that shelter.
2, 3. You're just running, and you're counting in your head as you're running. I mean, it's just kind of like a subconscious thing, I guess.
And you're like, I really hope I get to the shelter before I hit 90 and like something catastrophic happens.
Right. Luckily, because of the innovation of the Iron Dome, most of the rockets that are now targeting civilian population centers are being intercepted by the Iron Dome.
That's awesome.
So, and there's some news hot topics going on about that right now. But yeah, the Iron Dome is a really cool. The technology is just is blows my mind. It it senses a rocket being fired in enemy territory. Then it calculates the trajectory of that rocket, determines if it's a populated area, and if it is a populated area, shoots a $50,000 rocket to go intercept that rocket. But if it's not headed for a populated area, it lets it go and get the field.
Wow. That's wild.
It
That's
saves 50 grand.
um so that's one of the that's probably one of the only places that really exists because there's such high conflict over there. Like, do you know of any other place in the world that has that?
Nope.
If anyone knows, please let me know, because I'm
Please let us know.
I'm interested. That's wild. And it's wild as that's awesome technology, and it's to me that's also sad that it has to exist.
Yeah.
But
But it saves thousands of lives.
Yeah,
every
that's
day.
great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what else happened in Israel? Did you do anything else that's exciting, or
We went to a couple different museums. So because there's so much history in Israel, there are different museums. One of the museums is the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and it's very emotional.
that sounds like it is one of the most intense places to go. I talked about in the previous episode, one of my buddy who was here, he went to the concentration camps.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, and so I think right next to that, on the emotional intensity level, would be the Holocaust Memorial in Israel. What is that like?
It's crazy. So you get in there. So it's called Yad Vashem, if anyone wants to look it up. You go there and you start kind of at the beginning, and you go through, and it takes you through what they went through. It's different from the one in DC. If anyone's been to the one in DC, where it feels like you're in the concentration camps, the one in DC, this is different. You feel like you're in a museum, but you have so many artifacts and so many things from the Holocaust. For example, a bin of shoes, or just different things to experience what really happened. And it's sad. It's really sad.
Wow.
So, but yeah, there are tons of museums. One of the coolest experiences I had was at the Blind Museum.
The Blind Museum?
The Blind Museum.
Is that blinds in your house, or blind people?
Blind people. So, it was, I don't know really who developed it, but the concept, what it is you go in there and your tour guide is blind. But once you go in, after you, obviously you get into the entrance and you can still see, but then you enter the darkness and everything is pitch black. You are literally blind.
Wow.
It is you cannot see the person next to you. That's how dark it is in there.
So how do you maneuver?
So you have your blind tour guide, and they have it set up they have one area is a bar, and you walk into the bar and everyone sits at the bar and you order a drink. You don't have to, but you can. So we ordered drinks, and there was a blind bartender, and they were able to tell what dollar bill, what bill you gave them based on how it feels, or there are different ways to tell the type of currency or whatever.
Right.
And they were able to determine that. I couldn't remember what I was pulling out of my wallet. I mean, he could have said it was a $1 bill and it was a $100 bill. I wouldn't have known the difference until I got out. But but yeah, so we went through, there's a bunch of different exhibits that, again, the entire time you're walking through this place for it was probably 2 or 3 hours, is pitch black. You can't see your hand. You could put your hand literally an inch away from your eye and not be able to see your hand.
So what's the experience? You're just trying to experience the other senses.
Yeah. So we're using our ears and our sense of touch, and one of the parts is crossing a busy street. Like they have it set up, there are cars they have set up or whatever, and they have, noises coming from them or whatever. And so that you can kind of, really feel what it's like. One of the parts was like a little jungle, kind of like a little, they had, trees and a river that you had to cross. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was such a cool experience.
Is there other museums like this that take away your sense of the other things? I mean, I guess it would be hard to take away like sense of touch and smell.
I don't know, but I would love to experience something like that again.
Yeah.
It was such a cool experience because we were, it also helped us like gain confidence and communicate with each other because, we're all going through it at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're all helping each other navigate, these exhibits blind. And
That
it was
is
just a really
so
cool
cool.
experience.
That sounds so cool.
It was really awesome.
Yeah, so you got all those cool experiences. Was there anything else that you wanted to note about Israel and living there?
I think that's all the notable things that happened when I was there.
Okay.
It was just, I mean, I loved just everything. I mean, going to the beach, like another cool thing about it is like where I was based in Jerusalem, it has a higher elevation than in Tel Aviv, for example, where the coast is.
Yeah.
And so in the winter, for example, when it's like, 40 or 50 degrees in Jerusalem, it's like 70 or 80 degrees in Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv's only 45 minutes away. So
That
you'd
is
be wearing your
wild.
winter coat in Jerusalem, and then you take a 45-minute bus ride to Tel Aviv and put on your swim trunks and go surfing.
Did you get to go surfing down there?
I did not. I have never been surfing.
Okay. That would have been pretty cool.
That
But
would have been cool.
so you come back from Israel, you survive,
Yeah.
and you were off to college, and you mentioned earlier that you had a little bit of like difficulty overcoming like ADHD in college.
Yeah. So I went to college here at the Ohio State University.
The Ohio State
The
University?
Ohio State University.
That was annoying, and I know it.
Yeah. So I started undergrad, and again, I knew I wanted to become a dentist, so I picked my major as biology, as every pre-dental or pre-med student does, and went through the motions, went through the classes. Luckily, because I took AP chemistry in high school, I was kind of like one leg up, where I had an advantage in Gen Chem when I took general chemistry. Here, I had all that knowledge from taking AP chemistry that really prepared me to do well in college chemistry.
That's awesome.
And luckily I had a really cool professor who he used a reverse classroom teaching style, and he's actually won like Apple Educator of the Year awards and all kinds of cool awards.
Really?
His name is Dr. Matt Stoltzfus, or Dr. Foos. That's what he has people call him, Dr. Foos. He's really such a cool guy. And
so real quick, what's the reverse classroom style? What is that?
so the reverse classroom style is, so inherently traditional lecture styles interact with your brain the same way as watching cartoons on TV.
Really?
Your level of engagement is next to none.
True.
That's the problem with with traditional lecture styles. But the reverse classroom, what it does is it has you watch like a short lecture video the night before class. And then you go on and answer a few practice questions. Like, for example, in chemistry, there are a lot of math problems or a lot of equations that you have to balance or, do different things with. And so he would basically teach you all the content as homework before you got to class, so that when you're in class, you're 100% engaged. And his in-class classroom style, so again, it's a lecture hall with 1,000 kids, giant lecture hall, I forget what the name of the technology he used was, but he would have these practice problems, because in chemistry, the only way to learn chemistry is by doing practice problems. So he would prepare these practice problems for class, and they were the very complex problems. And so he would have us solve them on our own, and then he would have us input our answer on our mobile device. And then he would see if the class as a whole got it right or wrong or whatever. Regardless, he would have us interact with our classmates that were sitting near us. The way the software worked is it matched us with the students that were sitting next to us. Like, it knew where we were sitting.
Oh, interesting.
And like, we put in our seat, like when we got to class into the program. And so it matched us with the kids that we were sitting next with, like, 2 or 3 kids. And so we would get to interact with each other, discuss our answers, see if we got different answers. We can explain how we did it to each other. And then he would go over the actual real answer and solution and how to do the problem. So he engaged us 100% when we were in class. And it was at that point when I discovered really how to learn.
Interesting. Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy concepts out there about like how to learn, and it's awesome that this method really helped you.
It really did. And it propelled me to achieving my goal of, becoming a dentist. Obviously I haven't reached that goal yet, but I'm currently in dental school. But that, being in my first year of undergrad and really learning how to learn set me up for success in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And because up until that point I had really struggled. My medication for ADHD that I've been taking for the previous 5 years, since 8th grade, for some reason just stopped working, and so I had to get that adjusted, and it was hard. I was going through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like I was going through like a second puberty.
Wow. Man, puberty 1 was enough.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. I had to relearn my brain.
Yeah.
And, so this class with Dr. Foos really helped me, accomplish that. And then I went on that following summer and I took like a condensed summer organic chemistry class at Capital University, so that I was able to actually get hired on the next year as a TA teaching chemistry labs at Ohio State.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so I spent my last 2 years in undergrad actually teaching a chemistry lab, and that was such a cool experience.
So you're like a chemistry nerd.
I do love my chemistry.
But your major was biology?
Unfortunately.
Awesome. Yeah, so you went and did biology undergrad, and you're really good at chemistry. I remember you were really good at calculus too. So what is there any other like major significant impacts of undergrad that you had, or?
I don't think so. I mean, because I kind of knew my career path, I was just focused on crushing my classes and achieving my goals, and so, I was just going through my classes. I joined a fraternity, and so I did get to experience, a lot of different student organizations. I was a part of Buckeyes for Israel, which is a student organization for pro-Israel students.
Okay.
And so I got to do a little bit of, Israel advocacy on campus. And for those of you who don't know, college campuses are like hot spots for anti-Israel propaganda and anti-Semitism.
Really?
Yeah. There are a couple student organizations, I'm not going to get into it, that plan, these events that like to claim that Israel is an apartheid state or that Israel is committing genocide, but it's all false. It's all false claims and nonsense. We won't get into it.
That just like hurts because I just don't believe that there should be the hate groups out there. I don't know if you can really call them hate groups, but I guess it's your own opinion on what a hate group is. But I just think it's crazy to be out there spreading hate about someone else that you don't really know.
I agree. I think everyone should just focus on themselves and focus on living their life as they are. Don't worry about anyone else. Don't worry about, just live your life.
That's good
advice.
advice.
Be happy.
That's good advice.
Thank you.
So real quick, you touched on fraternity life. I had my previous guest was my own fraternity brother, but what's cool about the fraternity that you were able to join is you were a legacy member from our grandfather.
Yeah. So our grandfather, he was actually a member of my fraternity, and so he had told me, stories from college, going through what he went through at, in a fraternity. And it was so different from what I went through and the fraternity that I joined, because in 1989, ZBT abolished hazing. And so, and ZBT, that's the fraternity that I was
Okay.
in. And it was originally founded as a Zionist men's organization for Jewish men who were not allowed in traditional Greek fraternities. Yeah, you
Wow.
heard that right. Jews were not allowed in the fraternities were for white men, white Christian men, or
Right.
you know, weird, Jews and blacks and other people alike were discriminated against. Obviously, there were specific black fraternities. So obviously there's, this Jewish fraternity that was originally formed as like a Zionist men's organization, and then became a fraternity, and it was founded on its Hebrew phrase "Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh." And
What's that mean?
So that means Zion will be redeemed with pure judgment. And so what it means is that, when Zionism started in the late 1800s, it was a organization that was started by Theodore Herzl, and it was to get Jews to reunite with their ancestral homeland of Israel. Jews have a biblical, historical claim to the land. And so, in the 1800s, Theodore Herzl came about and he was like, this is bullshit. We need our land back. And so he, started, getting people to understand that, Jews should have a right to self-determination in their own ancestral homeland.
Mm.
And so that really is what Zionism is. And so I really embodied those values of the fraternity, ZBT, and its original founding principles, and the fact that our grandfather was a legacy. It really made me want to become a member and to continue that legacy. And so I did, and I had again, another life-changing experience in college. I got to, volunteer at Habitat for Humanity, and I got to, interact with other, student organizations, and we had, tons of cool parties. The different parties had themes. We had date parties. We had, we obviously drank. We were a fraternity, but, but it was a lot more than that. We did community service, and it was a really good time. It really helped shape who I am as a young adult male.
That's awesome. I think that's a pretty cool take, especially like being at a huge school. I talked about this in the last episode again, is that, you always hear about the bad reps that fraternities get. And yes, like you can just look at the news about Greek life on any large campus, but it's good to hear that you're out there volunteering and doing community service. There's a lot of bad that's out there against Greek life, but it's good to hear that you did good.
Yeah.
And like it, not only that, but it had a nice impact on you and shaping the way that you are, the person that you've grown to be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and we had, like, for example, like we had study tables, which is, where we had a required number of hours per week we had to study under supervision. Like it was,
wow.
It was one of the members of eBoard would sit in the basement or would rent a study room in the library or one of the libraries, and we would go sit with them for an hour or 2 hours. We'd sign up for a spot or whatever, and we'd go and do our schoolwork then.
Just to prove that you're doing it.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
I mean, we had academic standards. We had different standards of excellence that we had to adhere to.
Yeah, because you, if I remember correctly, you have to like maintain a certain GPA
Yep.
or you get kicked out of the fraternity.
Yep. I can't remember if it was like a 2.5 or a 2.0 or a 3.0. I can't remember what it was,
Okay,
but
so I
it
mean,
was
you at
something
least
around
have
like
to
a
try.
2.5, I think. Exactly. You got to at
Yeah,
least
so
pass.
that had a major impact on you. You went through undergrad. I got to visit you a couple of times. So we had a great time.
Just a couple.
Just a few. Um, but yeah, you graduated undergrad. And I
Yep.
don't remember exactly, but I was it right before you graduated that you met your lovely wife?
Yeah, so it was the summer before senior year of undergrad. I met my now lovely wife. Her name is Rochelle, and she's awesome. But yeah, we met the summer before senior year of undergrad. She was a student at Denison University out in Granville, I'm sorry. Granville, Ohio. It's about
Yeah.
30 to 40 minutes northeast of campus. So it was a little bit of a hike. And funny story, she was actually on an internship in Dublin at the time, and I was doing summer classes or something, and we had matched on Tinder.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, we matched on Tinder, but yeah, we set a date. We set up a date. We went to World of Beer over at Easton, and we sat and talked for like 4 hours, and we kind of
That's
both knew,
awesome.
the rest was
That is
history.
a sweet first date that you guys just hang out for 4 hours. Don't even, do anything else except chit chat, have a drink, and plenty of dates and plenty of awesome memories. And yeah, so you guys, she was what, a year behind?
No, we're in the same year, so we graduated together, and then so during senior year, I was applying to dental school because again, I had a dream to become a dentist. And so I was going through the stress of applying to dental school. I took the dental admissions test. I had to go through the stress of dental school interviews. And, so I had got waitlisted at two schools. One of them I'm not going to talk about. The other one I'm currently in dental school. Um, but the one that I'm not going to talk about, they had offered a master's program to me. And, I kind of took the bait. It was a little bit of a bait and switch. The promises that they were giving to us in this master's program turned out to be false promises. But like I said, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to name the school. But yeah, so I dropped that program and I decided to reapply to dental school. I didn't want to go there anymore. And I wanted to continue my life and achieve my goal. And so I reapplied to one school and one school only, the Ohio State University. Who would have
Who would
guessed?
have guessed that? Born and raised in Columbus.
Born and raised in Columbus, Buckeye through and through. I felt like if I was going to go to dental school, if I was going to make it, I was going to go to one school and I was going to do it right. And I'm so happy where I'm at. Again, I had to face a lot of adversity. It is not easy wanting to go to a professional school and struggling with ADHD.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
And
sure that
so,
is like a major challenge.
I mean, we're talking like I have to forcibly force myself to sit down and study. And like I have to make a conscious, conceited effort because if I don't, I get distracted or I'll forget something or this or that. So, um, you know, it was really hard learning how to live with ADHD. And I think I cracked it. I think I cracked the code. I mean, to kind of tell you about my, I guess, journey in dental school.
Yeah.
I started dental school in 2018. Yeah, in the fall of 2018. And um, I struggled really, really hard. Now, I was also planning a wedding. I was in a long distance relationship with my fiance at the time because we had gotten engaged. We had gotten engaged the previous March, and I started dental school. I moved to Columbus in June. I moved in with you.
We lived together for a little bit.
We did live together. Best roommates ever.
Absolutely.
And then, so we were long distance and we were planning a wedding. And then she finally got a job here in Columbus, moved out to Columbus. And then, but I was still struggling in dental school. going through a lot of changes in my life. And, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I didn't really know if dental school was the right place for me. I had lived this dream since I was in 8th grade of wanting to become a dentist, but I didn't know, was it my dream or was it my parents' dream?
Yeah.
And so, I eventually, obviously I'm in dental school now still. I had to take a gap year, not a gap year, a leave of absence. I was dealing with some health issues. And so I stepped away from dental school for a year. I started working. I was planning to come back, but then COVID hit. So then I was really planning to come back
Yeah.
because I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to become a dentist through and through. And that really was my dream. And so I decided to pick back up where I left off. I tackled my studying issues and I hit the books head on. Last year was probably one of the hardest years of my life. I took anatomy with integrated embryology, histology, and neurology. And we had, I took physiology, I took general pathology, I took pharmacology last year. I took a lot of really hard classes. Like these are all of these classes are like known as like the quintessential like dental school weed out classes. And it's funny because going up to dental school, I always thought that undergrad was for the weed out classes. I didn't think that those existed in dental school.
It weeds out the weaker people who can't even make it there.
Yeah. So
I don't want to call people weak, but just the people who don't want to do it for a living.
Exactly. And so so I was really struggling with figuring out how to learn this new way and how to get through dental school. And so, now I'm currently in I guess we'll call it the second half of my second year. I'm completing all the dental related hand skills courses. I'm in one of my classes, I'm creating a complete set of dentures. In, one of my classes today, we just made bleaching trays for each other. Last week, we took our impressions and we're doing dentistry. Like we are becoming dentists. I'll be in clinic in less than 9 months. And I'm so freaking excited.
It sounds exciting. So you guys are actually like now you were in the books pretty heavy learning, I guess, like the foundation, the first 2 years or so. And now you're getting into like the hands-on fun stuff.
Yeah. And so traditionally dental school is 4 years. And the plan that I'm on is a 5-year program where basically the second year, which is notoriously known as the hardest year for dental students.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking all of the hardest classes in all of dental school in 1 year. And, so for me, that was broken up into 2 years to allow my ADHD brain to take more time to process things, which is how my brain works. It just unfortunately takes more time to process.
Yeah.
So I need to spend more time studying and more time learning.
Man, that's so wild. And like you are crushing it. You're
Thank
doing
you.
a great job.
I'm trying.
I mean, I've watched all of this from the sidelines unfold, and I think you're just doing an amazing job. I think it's so cool that like you told me when we were like 13 years old or whatever, like little Gary's, I'm going to be a dentist. It's just like all the other kids that are like, I want to be a fireman, a policeman, like I want to be a doctor or whatever. And like most people don't do that. Like you just don't have those dreams, but like you actually lived the dream. You understood what you wanted to do at a young age, and you are here crushing it almost like what, 2 years away? 2 years away from graduation?
2.5, about
2.5?
just over 2.5.
Yeah.
I'll be in clinic. I'll start treating patients in less than 9 months.
Wow.
So I will get my first patients here soon. And I'm more than excited. I can't wait to, impact people's lives and their oral health and to, improve their oral health.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So with that, like you at a young age, like we already said, you knew what you wanted to do. Have you thought about like what what comes after graduation?
So, I'm right now just kind of going through school with an open mind. A lot of people will start dental school with like a preconceived notion of, I want to become an oral surgeon or I want to be an orthodontist. Well, I'll tell you one thing right now is I don't want to be an oral surgeon or an orthodontist. But I am keeping an open mind. I've had, currently I'm one of the classes I'm in is orthodontics. And in that class, I'm really not enjoying it. So it shows me that I really don't want to become an orthodontist. I get to see what orthodontists really do.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just thinks orthodontists go and look and then go to the next kid and look, and they don't really do anything. But orthodontists' jobs are really involved. I mean, it's all in the background. It's all from the treatment planning, and a lot of these cases are very complex.
Wow.
And I know that that's something I don't want to do. But, I'm super excited. Like I said, I'm keeping an open mind. A lot of my older peers, they said to keep an open mind through your first year of clinic and really, really like get a grasp on every little different procedure.
Mhm.
And then I'll be able to decide if I want to specialize or if I want to concentrate my focus into an area, and I'll be able to. That's one of the really beautiful things about innovation in dentistry today is that you can do anything you want in the field and do that and do it well, and you'll be successful.
That's awesome.
And
That's
so I'm
awesome.
super excited for that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, I don't know if your parents are going to listen to this, but is it the goal to stay here in Columbus, or do you think you guys might move and do something crazy and exciting once again?
That's a loaded question. I'll tell you this. It's not for certain either way. Again, I'm keeping an open mind. Anything can happen. I'll be applying to jobs in a market that's currently unknown. Again, because I'm not going to be applying for jobs until I graduate in 2024. Again, that's just over 2.5 years away. And so it'll be unknown what's going on with COVID, what's going on with the dental job market. I may not be able to find a job, or I may find the only job here in Columbus. Who knows?
Right.
I think, there's some really cool parts of the country that I would love to live in. Parts like Colorado. Denver is a really cool city. I love the West Coast. Different, just different scenes, different sites. I would love to stay in Columbus. I've been a Columbus native my entire life. I, obviously would love nothing more than to stay in Columbus. But if life takes me somewhere else, then that's life.
Yeah.
I like the ability to keep an open mind and say, we'll see where life takes me.
Awesome. So I remember something that you did. I don't remember what year it was, but when you mentioned the West Coast, you had this cool thing that you and your dad did when you were younger, and you got to go to see Jimmy Kimmel live.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What that was when you were in high school?
No, that was my first year of college. So
First year of college.
That was like December of 2013, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that was 8 years ago almost?
Yeah.
Like what'd you do? How'd you win that trip?
So yeah, like you said, I won the trip. It was actually really, well, it was both my dad and I. ABC put out a Jimmy Kimmel's Biggest Fan contest. And my dad and I, and when my first year of college, I was living at home. And so we always loved watching Jimmy Kimmel together. It would come on, late night TV. I was always a late night person. It's interesting. Some studies have shown that some adults with ADHD are more efficient actually working at night. And so like I was kind of a night bird. Like I, got a lot of my schoolwork done after dark. And so my dad and I used to watch Jimmy Kimmel. And then we saw this ad for the Jimmy Kimmel's Biggest Fan contest. And I was like, you know what, Dad? and my dad, he's, an awesome poet, writer. I mean, he's an attorney here in Columbus, but he really has a way with words. And I was like, you know what? We got to write a poem. Like, people are probably writing these paragraphs about how they always watch Jimmy Kimmel and they love Jimmy Kimmel and blah, 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 blah. And we're like, and in my brain, I was like, they want something different. I was like, let's write him a poem. And at the time, my dad was on a kick of acrostic poems. And so what acrostic poems are is you take like every letter in the name and you kind of spell it down the side, and then you start the sentence with that letter. And so we wrote down, JIMMYKIMMEL vertically. And then we started with J, and then we wrote, a line about Jimmy. And, we did a acrostic poem about Jimmy Kimmel, or, about how he made us feel, I guess.
Yeah.
And why we were his biggest fans. And lo and behold, a couple weeks later, my dad got an email. Congratulations, you're the grand prize winner. You win a round trip airfare, a 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lowe's Hotel in Hollywood. It was like a 4 or 5-star hotel. Like, they covered everything. All we had to cover was our travel and our taxi fare and our food. They covered everything else. And we got to go to the show. We got to go through the backstage entrance, and we got to go in. It wasn't like the green room where Jimmy Kimmel was. We didn't get to meet him, unfortunately. But like, there was an area for like invited guests, and they had like a bar and appetizers and stuff. And I was underage. I was a freshman in college, so I couldn't partake, but my dad did, and he said it was an awesome time. And he talked to a couple of producers or whatever, just chit-chatting with people and having a good time. And then we got to see the show, watch it tape live. And it was just such a really cool experience. And I got to travel around Hollywood and LA with my dad. And that was a really cool experience.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I like, you hear about these experiences and like win this crazy trip somewhere, and like I never do it. Like, I'm not gonna win, but it's cool to know that I know someone who actually won one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't think we were gonna win. We just shot our shot.
Yeah,
we figured shoot your shot and see what happens, and somehow we won. It was a really cool experience.
That is so cool. Yeah. Yeah. So come on, ABC. Why did you guys not get to meet Jimmy Kimmel? If you're his biggest fans and you're winning the contest, why did you not get to meet him?
Yeah, I kind of thought that was a little kitschy also. I was like, we don't even get to meet him? Like, come on. And I think, actually, if I remember correctly, my dad actually brought a framed copy of the poem that he wanted to give to him. Like, we didn't know if we were going to get to meet him or not.
Oh, wow.
But he ended up actually giving it to one of the producers, who did say that she was going to give it to him, and she put it in his dressing room.
Oh, wow.
So,
Jimmy Kimmel, if you're listening to this, or the producer who allegedly gave it to him, let us know. I'm very curious.
I'm curious too. That would be awesome. If you still have that, Jimmy Kimmel, that would be really cool.
That would be so cool. Yeah, man. What else have you done? What else is going on?
There's just so much going on. The world's crazy right now.
Yeah.
With COVID, and
here's something that I'm interested in. I've talked to people, and like, during this crazy time that we're living in, I like, the stereotype, I guess, or the assumption is everyone just kind of sits at home and doesn't really do anything. But everyone has actually done a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, we were, when we were kind of last summer, we kind of got cabin fever, and we were like, let's just start getting together outside, and so we got together, we had some cookouts, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we actually got to go. I had mentioned him in the pilot episode. Jimmy, you were also friends with Jimmy.
Yeah.
And we got to go visit visit his place up the lake.
That was awesome. I mean, that was a wild weekend.
Yeah, it was.
And Cranberry Resort up at Indian Lake really knows how to party.
Yeah, that place is awesome. If anyone ever makes it to old Podunk, Ohio, shout out to Cranberry Resort because it
Yeah.
is a sweet place.
Yeah. Indian Lake is a pretty cool place in the summer. I
Yeah.
didn't really think places like that existed close to home.
No.
You know, we grew up here in Columbus, Ohio. Like, what? There's a lake? What?
And it's just down the road.
It's an hour,
not
what,
that
an
far.
hour away?
Yeah, maybe
Something like
less.
that?
Yeah, I prefer not to say much else about that weekend. It was a lot of fun.
Just a lot of fun.
Few drinks were had, and we got to celebrate life with Jimmy, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and we got to understand how Jimmy lived life.
Yeah.
And he wanted everyone around him to be happy, and he wanted everyone to enjoy themselves.
Oh yeah.
And we did that. We enjoyed ourselves, and it was a really, really good time. And unfortunately, his passing, untimely passing.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, he's no longer with us.
Right. But there's a pretty cool thing that happened with you and Jimmy.
Oh yeah.
So like one of the things that myself and Gary are into is like bourbon. We're right near Kentucky, so we really enjoy bourbon. Not like getting crazy, but we enjoy the whiskey tasting aspect.
Yeah.
And it's cool to get together with friends and you talk about it and just enjoy it and just have a good time.
Yeah, and you originally got me into bourbon. Really it was like you and your dad, my uncles.
Yeah.
You guys kind of really introduced me to the wonderful that's a tongue twister. Wonderful world of bourbon.
Yeah, there you go.
English.
So Jimmy was also pretty big into bourbon, and he had some pretty cool bottles that we were so fortunate to taste that likely are just, they're stories of what these bottles were because they were just so rare and unique.
And that was one of the things that really drew me into bourbon. Like that's what people say, they fell down the rabbit hole. Like what made me fall down the rabbit hole, so to speak, was really the history and the stories behind bourbon. And like our grandfather loved telling stories.
Oh yeah.
And so, I love listening to stories. I love telling stories. As you can tell, I'm here for however long telling my story. And so when I really started to learn about what bourbon is, what makes bourbon, the history behind it, and all the stories about the bootleggers and this and that. And it really, made me fall in love with the spirit even more. And, it helps that it tastes good and it makes you feel good too.
Right. But yeah, so we got connected with some people like locally and even nationally. And we all just come together and enjoy a nice dram of bourbon. And one of the fun things that we got into was we'll give each other like Secret Santa gifts, and they are like it's not your average Secret Santa gift. Like
No,
it's over the top,
yeah,
amazing, and it is like we don't know, quote unquote, who gets who, but like afterwards you find out, or like when you're opening it, there's like kind of hints. If you know the person, like you're gonna get a hint of who it was.
right.
So you had the cool experience to get Jimmy for Secret Santa.
So somehow, the way the algorithm worked, somehow Jimmy and I both got each other. And but yeah, Jimmy was my Secret Santa, and luckily I actually I can't remember. I think I received. I can't remember if I received it before. It was right before he passed.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
like a week before he passed,
Yeah.
and I received it, and he gifted me some amazing bottles, and one bottle in particular that I have sitting at the very top of my bourbon cabinet. It's a Blanton's Gold, that I'll forever cherish, and we'll be able to sip together on his birthday, or on his, anniversary of his death, and to celebrate him and what he was about. He also gave me some Cuban cigars that we were able to smoke after our grandfather passed away, and we celebrated his life.
Yep.
And through Jimmy's generosity, and that gift, he was able to help us
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the like really cool things about this Secret Santa and you getting Jimmy was that it didn't matter what monetary value you spent on this box, but he recorded his opening of his Secret Santa gift, and that like 7 or 8 minute video of him opening a gift and him being very, very wealthy. Like, you didn't have to send him something that cost 10 plus grand to make him happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you didn't spend insane amounts of money, just like,
No, it was under $1,000.
yeah, it wasn't the monetary value, it was the thought that you put into it. And like, yeah, you hear about that all the time. It's the thought that counts. But like, when you watch Jimmy open it, you saw that you put thought into it, and you knew who was getting it, and you were excited to give that gift. I know you were excited.
I was. I kept telling you. I told you everything that was in that box.
Yeah.
And I kept telling you, I was like, oh, I got this for Jimmy. I got this for Jimmy. I was
Yeah.
so excited, it was funny though when I learned that Jimmy was the person that I was Secret Santa for. Like, I was really nervous because I was like, how do I get, what do I get for someone who has it all? Someone who
Right.
has, all the money and all the bourbon in the world. He had bottles that are one of one.
Right.
And so, what do you get for them? And fortunately for you and, through our friends and me getting to spend the weekend at the lake with him, and you and I was able to kind of understand him a little bit and figure out what he liked. And, one of my love languages is gift giving.
Right.
And so, it really warmed my heart to be able to do that. And then we got that video of him, and it was like the last video we have of him because
Yeah.
he passed the next day. Or it
Yeah.
was 2 days later. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
he passed pretty soon after, unfortunately. I mean, the fact that he got to, get a pretty cool gift, and the excitement and the happiness that was shared, even though it was virtually, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very sad that our boy Jimmy is gone. We always drink in his honor. We always play his favorite songs.
Yeah.
The man loves Steve Winwood,
He really does. Nothing better than Higher Love.
and because of him, we love Steve Winwood.
Cheers to Jimmy.
Cheers to Jimmy. Yeah, let's take it a different route, and like, what, so I know obviously like your wedding day was the coolest day of your life.
Best day of my life, hands down.
What's the next best day of your life?
Getting engaged, probably.
All right. What's the next best day?
I have no clue. There's so many good days in my life.
Well, let's hear about them.
Oh man. When I got accepted to dental school.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely top 3.
Right.
I remember getting that phone call from the admissions office at Ohio State in the dental school, and I answered it, and Terry Porter, who was the admissions, the head of admissions at the time, he's on the other line, and he goes, "Is this Gary?" I was like, yeah, Terry? He's like, yeah, it's Terry. Congratulations. I wanted to call you and be the first to let you know that, we'd love to have you here at the dental school here at Ohio State. And I lost it. I was overjoyed,
That's awesome.
and I was overcome with emotion. I immediately called my parents and called my future in-laws and, it was a rough time because my grandmother was actually in the hospital at the time, my dad's mom, and to be able to get into dental school and accomplish that, and she was on her deathbed. She had passed about a month later.
Jeez.
And that for her to know, she was the first to know. Well, one of the first to know that I was going to get engaged. She actually was one of the first people to see the ring, not in person, but over FaceTime. And then, she, again, one of the first people to know that I got into dental school. Now she's shining down on me, helping me through dental school.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I didn't know that, like, in, like, dental school, maybe specifically dental school, but, like, they don't just send you a letter, they call you.
Yeah, there's it's December 1st every year, or December 2nd, I guess, depending if it's a Saturday or Sunday. But anyways, it's like the first day that dental schools can notify people that they're accepted, and then you have like 2 weeks or a month to respond.
Wow.
And then, yeah, because the dental school admissions process, because it's highly selective, they have a wait list, and they'll just go down the wait list if people get accepted to their number one school, and they drop from one school, and so it's kind of like a mad dash. But luckily, somehow I got that call on December 1st that I was in.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Being like a dental student, do you have like a dentist hero? Like, is that a thing?
I mean, I would say my dentist growing up, Dr. Tilson, he was the one, when, again, back in 8th grade, when I decided I wanted to become a dentist, I approached him in synagogue on Saturday, and I was like, hey, do you think I could shadow you for a day? And he was like, absolutely. Like, and here I was, like a 13-year-old, like, can I shadow you? Like, he didn't know what to expect, I guess, but luckily he was willing to bring me in, and I got to look over his shoulder all day and see what a day in the life of a dentist was like. He actually told me ahead of time some of the procedures that I was going to watch, and one of them was a root canal. So I went home and I looked up a YouTube video on how a root canal is done and what is a root canal. And so I learned everything I could about a root canal. And I remember going to that appointment, and his patient was an elderly patient who was very nervous. I mean, he was ready to jump out of the chair. He had severe dental phobia. And Dr. Tilson was getting the operatory set up and everything. And I had asked him if I can explain the procedure to the patient. And he was like, sure, let's see what you got, kid. And, so I explained to him, what I had learned. And, the patient got comfortable in his chair, and he seemed to be somewhat at ease that, like, here's this 13-year-old telling me what's about to happen in my mouth. And I remember, he tells this story when he was drilling on the tooth, and he was going in with the files in the root tips. And I go, hey, doc, did you reach the apex yet? The apex is the tip of the root. It's the very bottom of your root of your tooth.
Okay.
The very tip of the root of your tooth. And you have to get all the decay out.
Yeah.
And so, or all the root contents out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't taken endo yet, so I don't know all the details.
Right. But like you're watching the I forget his name.
The dentist. Yeah, I was watching him going in with the files, and I was like, hey, did we hit the apex yet? He tells that story.
Okay. Was he like impressed that like a 13-year-old knew that?
He was very impressed. I'm trying not to toot my own horn, but he's not here to tell the story, so I kind of gotta share it on his behalf.
Right. But I mean, if I was in his shoes, I'd be like, "What did this kid just say to me?" Like, this genius.
Well,
Um,
thank you. I don't really think that way.
eh, whatever. Yeah, that's cool though. Like, I think it's awesome that you actually grew up with your dentist being your hero, and
Yeah.
like actually like calming down a patient is an interesting, I guess, experience that I don't know, it just seems like that's not a typical thing.
I don't know. I think part of it was because I was a teenager. I'm this 13-year-old kid, and so I kind of really didn't really have much fear.
Yeah.
I was
And
just kind of like, I'm just gonna go for it, balls
yeah.
to the wall.
Yeah, and you've always been like a very extroverted person too, so I think that might play into it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I like to talk. I talk a lot. I talk too much.
Yeah, you're the extroverted person. I'm the introverted one. But yeah, it's cool. Balance. We got the balance here.
Life is all about balance.
Yeah, so we've been here for a while, and I want to ask you a final question that I want to get your honest thoughts, and I want to know what you want. Like this is recorded and it's going to live on for however long it's going to be on the internet. So I want to know, what piece of advice do you want to live on as what Gary said, and that you want like your kids, your grandkids, whoever else in the world that listens to you, what do you want them to know? What advice do you want to give them?
All right. I'm going to give the world of the internet that's listening to this, one piece of advice. It is, be 100% authentically yourself. Don't be afraid. Everyone, well, not everyone, but there are so many people in today's world that are so afraid to be 100% authentically themselves, and they go through so much heartache in their life. It is so important to be yourself. And if you're not able to be yourself, then you're not able to accomplish your life goals. And so, I believe that, again, the key to accomplishing your goals are being yourself. And so, that's my one piece of advice. Just
Always be yourself.
Always be yourself.
Don't be who you don't want to be for anyone else.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's a good piece of advice. I love it. But yeah, so thank you so much for being here for episode 002.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Fatal to Prejudice. If you or anyone you know would like to be a guest, please visit my website at CameronChats.com and fill out the contact me form. Please fill out the subject line as podcast interview and write me a small blurb on why you or someone you know should be a guest. I'll leave a link in the description for ease of access. You can support this podcast by listening to it on your favorite podcasting site. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Another way to support is by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/Fatal to Prejudice. Patreon is the only monetary support system. If you would like to sign up and support through there, I am forever grateful for you. Again, thank you for tuning in.